Don't look at the camera.
I want to thank you for joining us and for participating in the Choctaw Chickasaw Freedmen Association Oral History Project. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Can you please, to get things started, can you state your name and where you currently live?
My name is Rita Marshall, and I
Can you
live.
speak a little bit louder? Your voice is very soft.
Or, sorry, my name is Rita Marshall, and I live in Salem, Oregon.
Salem, Oregon, my goodness. And you have a Choctaw or Chickasaw ancestor. Can you name that ancestor and tell us where they lived and who enslaved them, if you have that information?
So I actually have some of both. I've got both on my maternal grandmother's side. Her father was Choctaw, and his I just found out that he was actually enslaved. I thought he was born free, so it's been a little bit of a blow the last couple days. But his enslaver's name was James Choate, Choate, and then her mother was Emma Choate, née Dunford, and her mother was Hannah Blue, daughter of King Blue, and they were enslaved by Winchester Colbert.
And what was her name? You've mentioned her family, but that
Oh,
ancestor to start with,
oh, my grandmother was Myrtle Choate.
Myrtle Choate. So the person
Yes.
on the Dawes roll then would have been her father and
Uh,
mother?
Her father and mother, yes. She had her father on the Choctaw roll with two of his daughters. She wasn't one of them. She wasn't born yet. And then her mother was on the Chickasaw rolls with their son.
And
So they were split.
her name was what?
Mother was Emma Choate.
And you're talking about your grandmother's mother or who?
Yes, my grandmother's mother.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So your grandmother herself was not on the Dawes roll, but her mother. Okay, wow, that's good. Um, did you always hear of these individuals? Did you hear people when you were young speak of them? Or did you have the opportunity to even see pictures? What did you hear when you were younger?
We were always told about our great grandparents, never had the opportunity to meet them. So my assumption is either they were in Oklahoma by the time I came along and never left, or they had already passed on. So I
Mhm.
never had the opportunity to meet them, but we always knew about them. We always knew they were part native. We always heard Cherokee. So I was
Really?
really, yes. And I was really surprised when I started my research. It took me a while to actually figure out that I had found the right family because, as I said, there were two on the Chickasaw rolls and three on the Choctaw. I was never looking for those two tribes. I was only looking for Cherokee and I could never find them. But I kept saying, these names are right, but they're in the wrong tribe. And it just took me a little bit to kind of figure out, oh, they had the wrong tribe all along. They're in the right tribes. We had the wrong tribe.
Right, interesting. Is this because your family had migrated away from from Oklahoma, from the territory? Perhaps why you did not have that knowledge?
Yes, yes, they did. I grew up in Arizona, and then my mother was actually born in New Mexico. And I
Ah,
think the family went back and forth a little bit between Oklahoma and New Mexico, back again, and then back again. And then they finally settled in Arizona and they stayed there until my grandfather passed away in, I think, 63. And then my grandmother moved to Oregon probably around 72. And then
wow.
we followed. Well, she passed away here, and then we followed a couple of years after she passed away.
I see. Very interesting. Um, I guess not growing up in Oklahoma, then sometimes things, they are distant, and which might explain why you didn't really know a lot about this. Well, after you started researching, did you know before you started looking at records, did you know that these ancestors from the territory had been enslaved? Were you aware of that?
It wasn't. Honestly, I wasn't. I can be honest, and I think a lot of people still to this day are the same, had no knowledge that natives had slaves, had no knowledge. My family, if they knew, they didn't talk about it. And I would assume that they would have because they talked about, they were pretty open about things, but Yeah, I had no knowledge. It was a shocker. We all feel like we probably being here in America that, those of us that have been here for generations and generations, we
Yeah.
have, history in slavery, but it's one thing to assume it, it's a different story to actually know it, and it's a different story to see it in print.
What would you say then was your reaction to learning about that and learning about slavery that occurred in the territory, um, pertaining to your family? What was your reaction?
Oh, I was upset, I was angry, but I have to tell you, my first foray into this whole territory was, I think, an article that you actually wrote about my third great grandfather, King Blue. And I read, yes, and I read about him and, how he was basically a pillar of his community. He was a leader in his community. And so, even though it upset me, it gave me so much pride because I thought, this is somebody that really was doing trying to make something from nothing and make it better and make it better for all of us that came after him, those, who were with him, but those of us after him too. So I felt a lot of pride because of your article. I do want to thank you for that because that was really like my first foray into this whole territory, and to find him first and to know
Wow.
that about him was really amazing.
Did you grow up hearing his name?
Never heard his name. Never.
How did you make then that connection between your family as you knew your family and finding King Blue? I mean, you read an article, but how did you realize, oh, this is my
No, just really tracing back through, I found them on the rolls and I wanted to know more. My mother talked about her grandparents a lot, and I really wanted to know more. I felt like some type of real kinship with Emma, and I really wanted to know more. And so I dug into her family a little bit more. And then I saw, oh, her mom's name was Hannah, and I could find that in the records, reading through the Dawes applications. And then I saw something that said Hannah's father was King Blue. And I thought, well, who is this? And I just did a Google search and your article came up. And I think it's the Red and Black Journal.
family?
I think is what, yes. And I was just amazed. I mean, so that's kind of how it was. I just went
Wow.
with Emma because I felt close to her, maybe
When
because it's that matrilineal,
mhm. When you started reading about this, and I'm sure you were speaking with your family or with others in the family, did they say that they had heard the name or knew anything about King Blue and others? Was this new to
no,
them?
yeah, at that time, there was no elders left except my mom. She was the last one, and she'd never heard anything. And I do have an aunt that's been married into the family, so longer than I've been alive. So I shouldn't say no elders aside from my mom, but no blood elders. And she'd never heard a thing about him. So it was all news to her. She didn't know her tribes. She thought it was all Cherokee. I can remember being a little girl and my grandmother teaching me to count and teaching me, I would have to ask for things, and I don't even know the language because I didn't realize. I thought it was just the Cherokee language, but now that I realize that we weren't, I don't know if it was Choctaw or Chickasaw. Could have been either, could have been a mesh. I don't know. But I can remember, she taught me things and nobody else in my family ever even was taught. I maybe because I spent a lot of time with her, but yeah, I had never heard anything about King Blue. My mother never heard anything. If my grandmother said anything, I wouldn't remember. And I asked my mom, "You didn't know?" She said, I never thought to ask." And
Mm,
that's what she told me. I never thought to ask.
wow. Well, I'm curious. You've amassed a lot of information. How has this affected you, finding this out? Thinking one thing, finding something different, and then finding slavery, finding some stories of some of those who had been enslaved. How has this affected you?
No, for me, it has really made me just want to dig in deeper, know more. I want to know who these people were. And I'm really sad that they were forgotten, honestly. It really is sad. It's sad to me because I feel that we need to honor them. They came before us. They really paved a road that, we were able to kind of skate because they, paved that road for us. And I feel that the best way I can honor them is to find their stories and tell their stories. I talk to my daughter all the time. I talk to my grandchildren. I tell my sisters. Before my brother passed, I told my brother, it's like, hey, you won't believe this. Guess what? And I make sure that my family knows I don't want them to be lost again, because I feel like they were just lost for, generations, and they don't deserve that. We need to honor them.
Yes, yes. So well, you sort of answered my next question. What have you done with this information? How do you share it with your family? How, are you writing about it, blogging about it? Are you putting it together in some sort of book of life or whatever one wants to call it? How are you sharing it with them?
Well, it's been oral, but I actually just the last week was thinking, I missed out on a lot of stories, and I'm doing a lot of research. And I have these grandchildren, and I don't want them to forget what I've learned, what I've taught them. So I've decided, I actually am making, and I just am calling it a memory book, but I'm making a memory book for each of my grandchildren. And it'll have stories about these people that, we'll never meet, but they are a part of us. They're a very integral part of us. So it'll have stories about them. It'll talk about, their journey from slavery. I'm really trying to research things like why my family left Oklahoma. I haven't been able to really pin it down. I'm assuming at this point that it's probably economic, maybe to, some racial strife, maybe to alleviate some of that in a different territory is what my assumptions are, because I haven't been able to pin it down. I've asked the two oldest people in my family and they don't really know. So, but just looking at history, migration patterns, I feel that's what it is. And so, but I want them to know, this is what we went through. And I feel like if I don't do this, I'll miss an opportunity that was missed for me and I have to dig for it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that the fact that you're looking at the fact that your family's migrated away, have you been able to pinpoint when? Who was you mentioned the first person who had gone west, I guess you said to New Mexico and some, went as far west as Oregon, where you are now. Um, Time period. When did your family leave that you can determine to start that migration away from Oklahoma?
Well, I know my mom was born in New Mexico in 38, so it would have been at least in the late 30s. They did go back to Oklahoma because my aunt, who was born after my mother, was born in Oklahoma. And then my mom mentioned going to grade school in New Mexico because she said, "Oh, we went to those Carlsbad Caverns and it was so neat." And that was a memory that just came out as I was looking at your questions, trying to think of when they left.
Mhm.
And I had forgotten that. So they did go back and forth, but I'd say late 30s, early 40s, and
Oh,
they were there, 20, 30 years
during the
in
years of the
Arizona.
Great Migration, they were part of that, definitely, and they headed west. In terms of making that trek, looking for maybe better opportunities. Is your family now completely out of Oklahoma, or do you still have relatives in Oklahoma? They're still back there?
No, I have discovered through my research, I have some more distant relatives still there. I don't have any close relatives. We are all excuse me, Oregon or California for the most part.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Have you yourself ever been to Oklahoma? Have you ever traveled there?
I never really thought about going ever. And then I started doing the research. And both my parents are from Oklahoma. My dad's not a freedman, and he does still have family there. And so he lost touch just really quickly. He lost touch with his family after his father died in 1980. And I literally found them 2 years ago. It took all that time for me to find them again because the sons have common names, the daughters were married, I didn't know their names, and it was a lot of work. So after I found my aunties, I was thinking, I really need to go to Oklahoma. As I'm doing more research on my mom's family, it's like I really need to go to Oklahoma. I mean, it's just where my roots are. So I need to go.
What community in Oklahoma did your folks live on your Dawes enrollees? Where were they?
They were in, let me see. I know, and I think you corrected me. I asked you this before how to say it. Pontotoc. They
Pontotoc.
were,
Oh,
that's
okay.
where my grandparents got married. And then they had spent some time in, and I don't know, like, I know Ada, Atoka, trying to think of other,
Were they around any of them around Stonewall, Tishomingo?
Stonewall.
Oh,
Stonewall. Yeah, I didn't see Tishomingo, but I did see Stonewall.
mhm,
Hmm.
mhm. And I think King Blue was in one of those areas that you were just mentioning. So yeah, you're overdue. Wow. Well, as you look ahead and I guess in terms of not just sharing the information, compiling the information for the family, what are your plans at this point? You have been, I guess, finding connections with others. I know sometimes you have bumped into some, well, if not cousins, maybe cousins in common in some of our online groups. Um, what do you plan on making out of that or doing with that? What crosses your mind as you go?
I would love at some point, especially anybody that is still in Oklahoma, I would love to just to meet them because people that are still there, they will know more about the areas that would have meaning for me. I can look at a map and I can say I need to go here, but they can also say, oh, well, there's a big settlement here, or there's people in this cemetery here, or so I would really like to connect with more family. I haven't connected with as many of my mom's family, more of my dad's side, unfortunately. I mean, I guess it's not unfortunate. I'm really happy to connect with all of them, but there are definitely people that I want to reach out to. I know one person that I've reached out to on my mom's side, and she's got quite a bit of information. She has a private tree, and she still wouldn't let me look at it, but that's okay though, because I can ask her anything and she'll answer it. So I'm good with that. But she's got a lot closer connections to everyone, and she's one of those people. She literally travels. She just retired, and she travels and she meets family and she meets, she said, hey, you know what, we're cousins, we have these people in common, and I'm going to be up that way, can we get together? And she shares information that way. So I'm really looking forward to maybe meeting with her and then having her connect me with some of the other people. I think there's some people in our group that I am definitely related to, and I'm actually even friends with on Facebook, and I wasn't even aware that we're related.
Going to ask you a little bit about that. I know that you're involved and you are a regular attendee in our online brick wall chats, and you've met people there. And as you just said, perhaps some people that you've also met in the Facebook community. What does that mean to you? Because you are regular and you have become sort of not just a participant who's passive, but you make contributions and join the discussions and talk and ask questions and what have you. What's that been like for you?
I love it. That's why I keep coming back. I mean, a lot of times I do sit and I'm a little more quiet. I do try to contribute sometimes, but I soak a lot in because you're all very knowledgeable. And there's so many things that I've learned. You brought out that Choctaw Chickasaw census. I didn't know it existed until you mentioned it. And I was able to go and look on that census, and I actually found on the Schultz side that my great grandmother, well, nope, she'd be my great great grandmother. She actually had more children than I even knew. I knew she had two sons. Then a couple years later, I found a daughter, and then a couple of months ago, I found two more daughters, and then I found two more sons. And it's just like, so to me, it's just a wealth of information. So even if I don't always talk, I am soaking it all in. I am soaking it all in, and it helps me in a lot of aspects because even though my dad's not a freedman, he's still from Oklahoma. So a lot of things that you speak of, they reference him too. So it helps me on both sides of
Yeah.
my research.
That's really good to know. That is good to know. And you are a contributor actually in terms of our conversations that we have. Um, I guess going forward at this point in time, um, as you start to collect the data and put it in some sort of order that you can share in other ways with the family, have there been any surprises that you have found as you've been going through? And surprises either in the records, or I don't know if you use some of the newspaper websites or anything like that. But have there been unexpected finds for you? And if so, how'd you react to it?
Well, there's some things that, I found that I can't even still understand or explain. And one of the things that we touched on, and it made a little more sense. I had found some of those cases where the land was taken and, was stated, you can never get this back for generations. And I found that in my family, and it was really, I
Yeah.
don't even want to talk about it. It made me so angry
Yes.
because it's just like, that's just, but, I don't even have words for it. So you can't dwell on that, right? But it was really upsetting. I found out some personal things that I was not aware of. I, you know, have uncles that I didn't know existed, and not even just from the past, even from like my parents' generation. My mom's family I knew, my dad's I didn't. I found out that my dad had two brothers I didn't even know existed. He didn't know. He did not know before he passed away that these two brothers existed. So, I mean, the things that you find,
Yes. When you
it's
start the research. Oh
mhm,
my
it's
goodness.
amazing.
That's incredible. Well, is there anything else that you wish to add? I will ask one final question, I guess. I'm sure you're aware of some of the issues politically that pertain to those who descend from people designated as freedmen from both Choctaw and Chickasaw nations. Any reactions to some of those issues and challenges that many descendants have? Many find that, especially those who are in Oklahoma, may find a coworker who just found out that they have a Chickasaw relative and they were on the intermarried white roll. And you're like, well, my folks were there and came during removal, and you can't enroll. How does that sit with you? What is your reaction to that issue of political issues as they are?
It really bothers me. My best friend from high school, literally, we have this issue. She's not enrolled by choice. Her family is. She can be enrolled if she chooses. She's not choosing to. I think she's maybe thinking about it now, but our families sit on the same book. You know, my family comes from slavery, as an enslaved person. Her family comes from enslavers, and she can be enrolled anytime she feels like it. And I can't. And it really bothers me because I have native blood. She has native blood. I don't know that she has any more than I do. She has not tested, so she really has word of mouth. And she says, well, people don't believe it. I don't look native. And I said, well, you can't really go by looks. I probably don't look native either, but that doesn't mean that the blood's not there. I said, it doesn't mean that my people weren't there. It doesn't mean that my people weren't part of removal doing the heavy lifting. It doesn't mean any of that. I said, but I can't enroll. I said, and I can't enroll because why? Because they don't feel that we have the same rights. I said, and we have a treaty that says we have those rights, but they won't honor the treaties. I said, so I have a real problem with that. And she was a little bit upset because I said, to be honest with you, I hope they withhold funds to the ends of time until they do right by us, just because it's what we deserve. I've had other people say, why do you want to be part of them? They don't want you. It doesn't matter what they want. It's our birthright. That's all it is.
Mhm.
It's our birthright. And that's what it boils down to. We were there. We were part of that community for centuries, for however long. We were part of the community in Mississippi before we ever even went to Oklahoma. So we're part of that community. It's just our birthright.
Right.
And that's how I feel. And so I get really upset about it.
Well, I think you've said that very, very well. Is there anything else that you wish to add about just your story, your journey to find this and your perception of things as a descendant of freedmen from the nations.
I just want to continue to dig. I'm hoping that, if I dig more, dig deeper, expand, dig wider, that I'll find more information. I would love to find out, who King Blue's parents are. So far, no one's been able to determine that. I've heard he came from Africa, but I don't have proof of that. And I listen to the stories, I take it all in, but until I actually get proof, I don't put it down on anything
Right.
because you know what, I can say anything. I even thought that with my sisters, I could tell them anything. They wouldn't know, but I would know, and I would know it wasn't accurate. So I can't do it. So I just want to keep digging, and maybe I can, dig a little bit deeper and, find a little bit more. And it becomes challenging. And when you find that little nugget, it's just like, wow, like the heavens opened up and the sun is just shining on you. It's like you did this. It's a great feeling. And maybe you have to be somewhat of a historian to really appreciate it, because not everyone does. I feel like sometimes my family indulges me because they know I love it so much, but I don't care. They need to listen. It's their history. It's who they are, and they wouldn't be where they are without these people. So they're going to know if they like it or not. They're going to know. So that's my whole goal. I'm casting a wide net, and I'm hoping that anything that I rake in is something that I can use.
Wow. Well, I think that sums it up extremely well. I certainly want to thank you, Rita Marshall, for
Welcome.
just taking some time out just to talk and to share your thoughts and participating in the CCFA Oral History Project. We certainly appreciate your participation, and we also, well, just kind of hope that your research continues. You continue to engage with the community, and your participation is absolutely a delight, and we certainly thank you. And I look forward to seeing some things that I suspect when you start putting together some of those family books. I suspect that you might end up either blogging or publishing or doing something. So I'm hoping to read some things that you have to share with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.